Okay, good evening. This is Burnsville Economic Development Commission meeting of Wednesday, September 12th. I'm Gene Grisini, Vice Chairman of the Commission. We're going to have a call to order at this time. We need the adoption of the agenda. I need a motion for the adoption of the agenda. So moved. Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, approval of the minutes from July 11th, 2012. Everyone received those already. I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second? Okay, Chris, second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so moved. Open business forum. I think that you skipped.
Seeing no one in the audience that wishes to address the commission, Mr. Chair, I think you can move to item number 4.
Okay. Review of the MRQ remediation interim use plan. Go ahead, Rich, do it for us, please. That's Jenny starting out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I have about 12 slides I want to run through here to highlight some ongoing activities with the redevelopment of the Minnesota River Quadrant. And you have some good information in your background, and then I will just highlight some of that's been going on. I don't know if any of you had attended some of the council work sessions where we had started to get into this over the summer. If you have, then some of this may be repeat for you. So I'm going to go through the current situation in the MRQ, go through some of the recent findings, talk about what the goals of the council are, and then kind of get into our next steps. And some of this will be coming back to you at future dates, which is why we need to introduce this to you. The City Council adopts ends and outcomes every year. We have some specific goals related to development and redevelopment that talk about the prioritization, like remediation, of the MRQ. So that's why we're doing this. Redevelopment of the MRQ is very important to the city. It always has been. And as you know, the area is north of Highway 13, west of 35W, all the way up to the river, west to the city of Savage. So it makes up about 1,700 acres, and it's an area that certainly will be redeveloped at some point in time. And so our goal now is to talk about what can we do and where can we do that, and what are the obstacles to getting redevelopment. So the area that we've focused on, recognizing that the redevelopment of the quarry, which is north of the railroad tracks, it's not shown on this picture, they're going to continue mining for many more years to come. The Burnsville Sanitary Landfill is going to continue to take trash for many years to come. So our current efforts are focused on the area south of the railroad tracks, just west of 35W right here, and then Highway 13. 13 and 5 is down here. With the reconstruction of 13 and 5, we think that'll spur, or we have the opportunity to kind of capture some of that change and that redevelopment of that intersection into private redevelopment. So that's why we're focused on this area here and what opportunities we can perhaps take advantage of. So our current situation is realization that the MRQ vision will be delayed due to the changes in the life of the quarry and the landfill, as I've stated. The market doesn't appear interested in developing this portion of the MRQ without some kind of assistance, either financial assistance or land use modifications. There's some serious site constraints that are down there, and any inquiries that we have had over the past 10 years have not gotten very far because of the impediments to development and the cost to them. We have some allocated funds from a TIF project, and we also have a grant that Skip applied for another $250,000. So we have about $500,000 that we've started to work with. The grant that we got was for soil remediation and for construction of the Yellow Freight Pond. There's a pond that we're also working on in that neighborhood. So to get us started, we did a soil study, and we worked with the property owners to see which property owners in that Lady Bird Lane area would be interested in being part of a project without us really knowing what that project could be, but let's find out what the conditions are there so we know what that project would consist of. What are the conditions there? So we did some soil borings out there, and what we found out is it'll take approximately 800,000 cubic yards of soil remediation to fix the soil in that highlighted area on the previous map. The cost to do that is about $13 million. And you'll see the county assessor has those parcels valued at $4.5 million. So a huge disparity in the cost to get those properties to a developable stage versus what they're currently worth. So how do we fill that gap? And this explains why the market hasn't done anything in and of itself. The value just isn't there. With 13 and 5, we believe there'll be about approximately 300,000 cubic yards of excess soil. You may recall Highway 13 is going to be lowered approximately 20 feet. So all that dirt needs to be scooped out and put somewhere. So we'll have about 300,000 cubic yards left, potentially available in 2013 or actually be 2014, which is 40% of what is needed for this project of the 800,000. So we're working on ways to, we can't guarantee that that dirt can be used in this area, but we're doing what we can to make sure the opportunity exists for that to happen. Let's see here. Whoops.
Has any of the contractors come to you, to the city, and said, we need to get rid of this dirt?
I'm sorry.
Have any of the contractors come to you and said, we've got to get rid of some of this dirt, or is that not being bid at this time?
13 and 5 is going out for bid next month. And then we'll put this, once we kind of get into this, into some of the details, you'll see that where the sites may be that some of this dirt can be stored. And we will put that in there as an option. Let the builder, or let the contractors know that we have sites that are available. Mm-hmm. We're optimistic that because this site is so very close to the construction area that the cost, it would be the most cost-effective place to put this dirt because the transportation costs are a lot less. So.
If I could, Mr. Chair, 5 and 13 is not a city project. It is a state and county project, so we cannot control where the dirt is going to go. All we can do is make the offer that this is the closest place to take it.
This makes sense.
It's a good question, and I should note, Skip has certainly been working on this project, myself, our CFO has been engaged on this, our city manager, and certainly our public works director has been a core part of this team. So I'm just giving the presentation, but it's a whole group of people at the city that are engaged on this. And Skip, certainly feel free to jump in any time I miss something. So Skip and our public works director met with some property owners out there this summer to talk about what their level of interest is in being part of the future soil remediations. The Dorsky property, if you look in your background at your map, that's highlighted as such, and that's Park Jeep is their property. They own several acres, and they're interested in doing some kind of redevelopment in the future. They're not sure what or exactly when, but certainly something in the near future they would like to do on their property. The Asselford property is located pretty much in this center circle, bound by Lady Bird Lane, kind of like an island on this map. They own all the property that's in the center of that. They're interested in mining their soil. They have some dirt operations that are on their property right now that are set to expire in November of this year. They have, because they have the majority of the property, the cost to fix their soils is the most. So they're certainly interested in staying in having that dirt use on their property to allow them to remediate their soils. They said they would like 15 to 20 years to mine their dirt until full redevelopment would occur. Then we have what's called Innovative Landscape Property, or Rebecca property. That property is closest to Highway 13, right at the intersection of 13 and 35W. You may have saw dirt piles there that have grown over the years and then decreased. They're also interested in extending their interim use to facilitate removing soils as part of the project. And then the Nolan properties is just to the north of that, right abutting 35W. They're not interested in developing their property at all. They asked us about acquiring easements or buying the property from them because they're not interested in fixing the soils or selling it for development. So those discussions are ongoing, and that will actually help our project because then we'll have a guaranteed place to put the dirt from 13 and 5 if we were to acquire those easements or purchase the property. So I just want to go over just a little bit on the remediation process. The poor soils have to be dug out. And when we say poor soils, they're not contaminated soils. They are just soils, a lot of peat, a lot of soil that is not suitable for foundation. So it really needs to be extracted all the way out and then mixed, aired out, mixed, and then it's sold and carted off-site. And clean fill is brought in and compacted to certain standards to be able to support foundations. And Gene, you may know more about the construction business there than I do, but that's the short story on the soil remediation.
I'm not an earthman.
You're not the dirt guy?
I make them out of the ground, that's what I can understand.
So we hope to use the dirt from 13 and 5 and certainly some other projects that the city does from time to time to help fill in the holes once they're dug out. We think this will be about a 5 to 10 year process, and with Park Jeep being the ones that are most ready to do something with their property, we think that that one is the one that will kick off the soil remediation project. The Asselfords, when we met with them, remember we talked about the interim uses, and they still want to keep the dirt on their property. So we need to amend our zoning ordinance because it previously was set up to get rid of these outdoor storage uses and get rid of the dirt piles. Well, if we recognize that things are not going to be changing anytime soon, and if we want to let the property owners facilitate the remediation of their own soils at their own costs with some help from the city, then we need to change the ordinances to allow them to do that. So we would allow interim uses, which are temporary uses, that would allow for the soil mining with a very specific schedule and obligations to remediate soil. So if someone's given a 10-year period to remediate their soils, we don't want them to wait till year 9 or 10 to start. We want the activity to start right away within the first year or two and continue it with a certain percentage every year. The soil certainly could be mixed for reuse, and a small portion of it may be brought in, stored, and sold on sites. A couple of the businesses that are out there that are in the dirt business, they bring in dirt right now, they store it on site, they sell it as is, and then they ship it off. That doesn't necessarily help us when we want to get to soil remediation. We need that dirt dug up, mixed, and then carted off site. But in order for those businesses to stay there and be a part of the remediation, they need to continue to bring in their clean dirt and sell their clean dirt just to help cover their costs for being on site. So the interim use will allow them to do that. I think up to 10% of all their dirt is where we're at with them on that. So those interim uses could last up to 15 years. Then the other piece that we're working on is creation of a tax increment finance district. And I think most of you are familiar with this, but we need the ability to capture any increases in the market value to put towards the redevelopment of the MRQ. So we are in the process of identifying which parcels best fit all the criteria, and there are a lot of rules and regulations for which parcels can be included and when and why. And so Skip and I and our financial consultant and attorneys are working through that right now. This will come back before you once we have a handle on which parcels qualify for that, which ones are going to be doing work within the first 4 years. That's another criteria, and what the costs and uses of those TIF funds will be. So just know that that will be coming before you probably at your next meeting. So certainly Skip and I stand for any questions. Our direction from council right now is to proceed working on acquiring easements and our property to have places to put dirt, work on the ordinance amendment. That will be going to the Planning Commission later in October and going to council, I think, at the end of October, beginning of November, and then work on creation of this TIF district. So we kind of have a multi-pronged approach towards the redevelopment there of the MRQ. And I'll stand for any questions.
That is, obviously, with the discrepancy between the cost and the value, so if they get free dirt coming in, they have this 15 years to remediate their soil. Has the city looked at what the value of those properties might be in the future if they had good soil?
Yes, Commissioner, that's a good question. That will be part of the TIF plan that we bring before you. So we have to do a thorough analysis of what it's worth now, what the cost is to fix it, what it will be worth when it's done, and put some projections to that. So that will be something that we'll be looking at.
It seems like it'd be in the interests of those property owners, especially if they wanted to stick around, to do that, because they're getting basically free good dirt.
Yes, that's why we think this is a very creative solution to solve the problem.
If I could, Mr. Commissioner? Commissioner, just so there's no misunderstanding, the soil remediation alone does not increase the value of the property. The value of the property will not change with the soil remediation. However, unless we do the soil remediation, no development or building will occur.
Right.
It's only after the development.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. But if you had land that was ready for to be developed, it would be worth a little bit more than land that wasn't ready to be developed.
Not necessarily from a tax standpoint.
That's exactly true. Yeah, I'm talking about from a
Market standpoint.
market standpoint. Right. Okay.
Any other questions or comments, Commissioner?
Just real quick, you have a little comment about the Cliff 35W interchange. Are they going to wait till 2015 to address that? With Walmart in there now? I mean, I drove by it for the first time, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I said, this is going to be a problem.
Yes, Commissioners, that's been on our radar for quite some time. I don't know if that's a county road in that location or not, but yeah, and so it's on our radar to fix after 13 and 5 get started, then we will do the Cliff
Walmart will
Road.
be operating for a couple of years.
Absolutely. There's language in Walmart's PUD to look at traffic on the east side frontage road in front of Northern Tool and Dodge Burnsville. They had escrowed some cash to do a traffic study and some necessary improvements if the traffic study warranted it. I think it's a year after they opened. So if traffic is a problem, and we did a whole traffic study before Walmart was approved, and it did not talk about the need for a new interchange or signal at Cliff and 35 off-ramp there. We know the layout is not ideal by any
I
situation.
can
so-
just imagine cars piling on 35 waiting to get off on that exit. And, I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. The traffic studies did not indicate that that was a problem, so we don't expect that to be a problem.
How would they do a traffic study without the store actually being up and open?
Yeah, it's based on projections and where people are coming from to the store and a percentage coming from the north, south, east, and west, and the existing traffic counts and situations, so.
Thank you, Jenny. I don't believe that you're asking for any recommendations at this point, but we appreciate your presentation. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Okay, on to MCCD, investment, Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I'll do my presentation from here, as there is no PowerPoint. As stated in your background, there is an organization that has existed for about 9 years now, primarily in Minneapolis and St. Paul, the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers, or MCCD. They provide business consulting. They provide loan services. They are not a bank, so they will do loans that would be considered riskier than a bank would do. So they're very engaged in startup loans. They're very engaged in especially loans to, for example, restaurants, which are considered a little bit higher risk loans. The MCCD approached the cities in Dakota County, basically through the Dakota County Community Development Agency, earlier this spring, and made an offer to put together for Dakota County what they refer to as their Open to Business program. And what that would consist of is they would assign a business consultant whose full-time job would be to work with businesses in Dakota County. That consultant would spend a certain amount of time in each of the cities in Dakota County, probably a half a day or so every week or every other week, where they would be available. Business could come and go over business plans, get any type of questions answered, get advice on where to seek legal services, basically any type of business consulting that you could look at. They also would then engage in loan activity to any of those businesses that need the loans. Typically for a startup, they'll do a loan up to $25,000. They will do loan for capital equipment and things like that. The cost that they are asking from the Dakota County cities is $150,000 a year. That cost was divided out amongst the cities based on population. So Burnsville's portion of that cost would be $15,000 a year. The Dakota County CDA, who is also actively engaged in development activities, has agreed to basically underwrite 50% of each city's cost. So the cost to the city of Burnsville for a year's worth of this service is basically $7,500. As the community development director from Egan mentioned at one of our meetings, we can't hire a consultant to do a project for us for $7,500. And they will basically be doing all of this. There is no additional impact to the city of Burnsville, so should they make a loan to a business in the city of Burnsville and for some reason that business fails, that onus is all on them. There is no additional impact to the city of Burnsville. At this time, they are only asking actually for a one-year commitment. The discussions amongst all of the Dakota County cities have been that the commitment should be for at least 2 years. Our besides the $7,500, our participation in the program will be basically to help them market the program to our businesses and then introduce them to our community bankers so that the bankers are aware that this service is available whenever they have someone that is of need of this. This will somewhat fill the hole that the loan guarantee policy was going to fill that council decided not to move forward with. We've probably had 6 or 8 meetings with MCCD, the cities in the county, and we're pretty comfortable with the program that they have laid out for all of us. At this point, what staff would be looking for is any of your feedback and a recommendation. Staff's recommendation would be that the Economic Development Commission does recommend to City Council to fund inclusion in this program for up to 2 years. With that, Mr. Chair, I would stand for questions.
Question I have, Skip, how many cities are in Dakota County?
10.
10 cities. And, okay, so we're talking that Burns will get this person to sit in on something 4 hours every week, sounds like?
It hasn't been finalized, Mr. Chair, but we are looking at a half a day, once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. We're still in that process of finalizing.
How can that help you? I don't quite understand.
The purpose of the person being available for a half a day is that any business that needs that assistance can come in and see that person during that half day. If there are longer-term issues that need to be dealt with, the consultant can work with those businesses on a longer-term basis. But the half day every week or every other week is kind of a walk-in type session to get things started. MCCD would also turn over any business to other consultants that they have if that business needs that type of help. Obviously, at $15,000 a year, we're not buying someone's services for 5 days a week. Wish we could, but we can't for that.
If we don't have this person or this organization, what happens?
We don't have the value of their services.
Which is to help basically for loans, as I am understanding.
And we would not have any options for a startup business that could not get a bank loan to possibly get a loan.
Unless that startup business could figure out another way of doing it.
Absolutely.
Through a bank or through a private investor or whatever.
Yeah. Again, a lot of the loans that they're going to do are going to be the loans to the businesses that either A, cannot get a bank loan, or B, cannot get a bank loan to cover the total need, so they could be used as gap financing. So obviously, if we do not do that, that would not be available to any of our businesses or our potential businesses.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I can add to that, they're not just doing the loans, they also do business planning consultants. So if someone was interested in starting their own business, they would help them work through their business plan and let them know if their expectations are too high, if they're projecting too much revenue, if their sales, if their rent is too high. They would help them with the business planning part of it. So a lot of help with the entrepreneurs that we currently don't provide that service at all. We refer people to the Workforce Center or something for some help with entrepreneurs that are looking, or to SCORE perhaps.
Again, so if they're not available to us, they would go to the Workforce Center, they would go to Small Business Administration, whatever, who would also look over their plan.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what those other organizations do, but when we met with MCCD, and this was a couple years ago, Skip and I met with them, it seemed like a good service to help someone who was interested in starting their own business who really doesn't know how or the tools or isn't connected, just someone to sit down with, and they seem very realistic, like this is not going to work. You need to come up with a different plan and help them come up with that different plan. So the business consulting part of it. They also helped with some small business loans on in St. Paul on University Avenue with the light rail project. So when there's construction that's happening and businesses are affected, they are also there to help them with their business planning and perhaps also provide resources for gap financing for those kinds of activities as well. So it's kind of a variety of things that cities don't provide, which is why several cities across the metro are members of them, because it does fill a gap.
And they don't charge the businesses for that?
Correct.
I didn't catch that, Eric.
Oh, and they're not charging the businesses incremental consulting fees or something like that?
Who's funding these loans?
That's my question.
They have a number of foundations that fund their loans, so,
So it's not taxpayers.
no.
I mean, I know it wouldn't be Burnsville taxpayers directly, but these are private donations to a nonprofit that ends up funding these loans based on the recommendations of this consultant who hops from city to city, and I think we almost have to recommend participation in giving that information.
What happens, so you've got 150,000 divided by 10 cities, gets us 15,000 per year. What if all 10 cities don't participate?
At this point, all indications are that all but one of the Dakota County cities are moving towards participation. I think the likelihood of a number of Dakota County cities not participating is virtually non-existent.
Okay. And then how does a business in Burnsville or other cities find out about this? You mentioned marketing.
That's the commitment that we as staff would have to make, is that we would have to assist them in promoting this. We obviously also would ask for the help of our chamber in promoting this, Commissioner. And then, as was mentioned, we would attempt to introduce them to our banking community, because that would be a source of possible leads for them. But no question, the onus will be on city staff, especially the first year, to promote this process.
Any idea how many hours the city staff will spend on this?
No, couldn't give you.
First, okay.
Let's put it this
But
way.
it will be additional cost.
Let's put it, no, there will not. I'm salaried. Whether I work 60 or 80, the price is the same.
Yes.
I'll go to Chris first, and then I'll take it second.
I was just going to ask, are there other, you said there's other cities that are doing this program. Have you talked to them and see if they recommend it, what they feel about using these guys for?
I have not directly talked to them, Commissioner, but it's my understanding that both the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul are extremely happy with the program, and that's actually where the program started, so they have the longest use of it.
So the program started in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and they're expanding that to Dakota County. So we don't have a run rate in Dakota County. Is that right? This is new for Dakota County?
Absolutely,
Okay.
Commissioner.
Thank you.
Not to dwell on the funding, but have you talked to the bankers at all to see if this would satisfy their equity position in any SBA process or any normal bank loan process?
Commissioner, I have not directly talked to our bankers, but we have been told that it has been used in the SBA program.
As a part of the equity?
Yes.
Okay. So it's that answers my question about whether or not it's private money, essentially, that funds the loan purse.
Any other comments?
Seems like a very positive thing, and not a lot of money to get that extra resource. Very minimal risk, I would say. But it helps a couple businesses for $3,500. Quite good value for money.
Do we have a recommendation?
I had one more question. You're looking for a 2-year commitment. Is the first year $7,500? Is the second year $7,500 as well?
That's
Okay,
correct.
that's
And again, MCCD is only asking for a 1-year commitment. The general consensus amongst the cities, as we've discussed this program, is that we should be going into it with the idea we'll do it for 2 years,
Yes.
knowing full well the first year is mostly the marketing. Obviously, if we were all disappointed in it after the first year, we would end it.
Does MCC, do they have a requirement in their nonprofit bylaws to only fund what is in their reserve? So it's not like a bank where they have a 90-10 ratio or anything like that. Because again, it goes back to the funding. If they're funding in excess of what their deposits are, someone's got to bail out the, do we have any,
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I can't answer
Okay.
that question.
you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Do we have a recommendation?
I would move
Commissioner
that
Rapp?
we support this.
I would second it.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Fourth Amendment to, review of the Fourth Amendment to the contract for private development between Burnsville EDA and Burnsville Crossing LLC. And that's you again, Skip.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Burnsville Crossing LLC is the name of the project located at Burnsville Parkway and Nicollet. It is the project of which the CVS Pharmacy is currently under construction. The two parcels there are owned by Wellington Management. Wellington Management has sold the one parcel to CVS. There is a second small parcel in which, in the current development contract, calls for a 5,000 square foot retail office building. For those of you who have been on the EDC for a couple of years, you've seen this contract before. We've amended it before, and we've amended it before for the same reasons we're looking at someone amending it or asking for your approval to amend tonight, in that development hasn't occurred as fast as possible. Their current contract calls for the completion of both of those buildings actually by September 1st of this year, which obviously is not going to happen. What Wellington is currently facing is, A, the second parcel was primarily used as a staging area while they built the CVS Pharmacy. B, no one is building spec buildings right now. That is, no one is building a building and then filling it with tenants. So they need to get a tenant that needs, if not 5,000 square feet, at least the majority of that. And C, right now, if you're a retail-type tenant and you need immediate space, there's immediate space to be leased and had, so you're not going to be waiting for someone to build that. So they are requesting an amendment, and basically the amendment would be that they would need to complete that second building by March 1st of 2015. There are implications to the TIF that they would receive. Obviously, they'll have less time to receive TIF, which means the amount that they're going to receive is less. They are fully aware of that, and obviously know the implications of that, just like those implications have existed when we've done the other amendments. They will receive no TIF until the second parcel is developed. And as you know, we operate on a pay-go system, which means they pay their taxes in first, and then we give them their entitled increment. Staff would stand for questions. Staff would again recommend that the Economic Development Commission recommend that the EDA amend this contract as requested.
Gentlemen, questions or comments? Do we have a recommendation?
Just a quick question. What happens to this site in between now and when they do construction? If it's staging now, I mean, they tore up all the parking lot. Is it just a green field? Is it dirt? Okay.
Basically, we'd ask them to seed it,
Okay.
and it would be green
Okay.
from now till then. If you recall, when the TCF building sat on the site, Wellington Management has owned that site for a number of years now, and quite frankly, Wellington Management has probably been one of our best developers in the sense of actually maintaining a site until the development occurs. I think most people would drive by the TCF when it was there and think it was still an operational bank because they did such a good job of maintaining it.
Did that have something to do with the location?
No, I think it has to do with the firm. They're a highly respected development and management firm in the Twin Cities.
Further comments? Motion?
A motion to approve?
Second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion pass.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just for policy's sake, this commission can recommend approval. You cannot recommend to approve, so your motion will read that you recommend approval.
I think we all recognize that. Apologize for putting it the wrong way. Updates.
In your packet, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, we did provide you with the activity report over the last 2 months as it relates to the STEM activities. I won't go through all of those. However, I would draw your attention to only one. Due to the efforts of our mayor, we did receive a one-day visit from the North American CEO for a international global electronics company. We had a meeting in which representatives from our 2 community colleges, our school district, and our workforce center went over the educational piece that exists in this area. We toured the PAC, and then we toured a couple of different businesses in Burnsville to just give them a perspective of what Burnsville is all about. They are not looking to do any immediate expansion. This was more to kind of get on their radar. What the CEO did share with us is that prior to the visit, Burnsville was not on their radar, nor was the Twin Cities. He did state that after the visit that Burnsville would at least be on their radar. This would be very similar to the efforts that Greater MSP is doing right now, and Michael Langley, the president of Greater MSP, did join us for lunch that day. This is the fight that we have, is that quite frankly with a lot of these major corporations, and especially some of the national site selectors, is as surprising as it may be, the Twin Cities are not on their radar. So what we engaged in is what Greater MSP is basically engaging in on a daily basis. We're flyover land. And we have, prior to Greater MSP, we've had no really strong ongoing vehicle to actually promote the Twin Cities. Many of the other regional centers have had for a number of years similar endeavors such as Greater MSP to promote them. Mr. Langley was the principal in, I believe it was Philadelphia, that was doing that promotion. The state has an effort called Positively Minnesota, but quite frankly, it's a very underfunded effort, so they can't do much, and hence the creation of Greater MSP. And as you know, they are moving towards a $4 million a year budget, which will buy them a lot of conference time and advertising time and efforts to go out there.
Great. Anything else, Cal?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I guess nothing else. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Move for adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. And Jenny?
I'm sorry, I thought you had the map in your background.